Welcome back. If you listened to part one of this conversation with Katie, you heard a very thoughtful introduction to essential oils, how people discover them, how scent works in our brains, and how a curiosity grew into a collection and a lifelong practice. In part two, the conversation goes deeper. We start talking about things that collectors are often fairly interested in: how to start a collection, how you know what's authentic, how you store your oils, how you might develop your own taste and sensibilities when it comes to fragrance. One of the things Katie talks about in this second part of the conversation, that's similar to grapes, that the plants used to create essential oils will have very different properties depending on where they're grown within the world. So, different properties, different scents. So, this conversation in part two really moves from introduction into practice. How people actually work with the oils, blend them, and even build relationships with the plants that these fragrances, these oils are coming from. So, if part one opened the door, then part two is where we step inside and get nice and comfortable. This is Keeping Score. Enjoy the conversation. When you are creating a blend, right? You're sitting in front of your organ, you have
Yeah,
your bass notes, your middle notes, your top notes. You have this, you know, you what you know is you can tell a story, right? You can
yeah.
kind of create this environment through, you know, what's the right word? Scent storytelling.
I like it. I like it.
I know there's a
Yes.
better way to say that. So when you create those blends, what are you responding to? Is it the season, the person? Is it something internal? Like, is it something that you don't really even understand why you're doing it? Like, what if we all have a really clear picture of the tools in front of us in the organization, help us understand how you start to create these things.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is just a conversation where we start talking about art, like why does any artist create anything? Are they trying to express something or capture something or um, you know, uh like yeah, express or capture something. And so the same way that someone would maybe write a poem or a song because they're excited or nostalgic or brokenhearted or whatever, the same reason you would create a scent, like what is inspiring you? What moved you? What did the muse just come and whisper in your ear? And so the anointing oils I sell currently are based on archetypes. And so I was inspired to blend scents that would represent archetypes as a way of really quickly accessing these like facets of wisdom that I think we all have.
Hmm.
And so I wanted to blend these scents that could be used as tools to access wisdom in a really efficient way. And so I first thought about what is this archetype? What are the like if an archetype is like a bouquet of human characteristics, what are each of the flowers in the bouquet? Like
Hmm.
what are the aspects of this archetype? And then what are the feelings of those aspects? And then I would, based on my own relationship with the scents, how they make me feel, how I notice they make other people feel, then I'm kind of creating like a reverse association where, I'm like, if I need a scent that feels like um something weird like commitment, because we're just about to be in priestess season and she rules commitment and vows. Like I figured out what oil, in my opinion, smells like commitment and vows. You know, like I like to let my brain associate really freely. So instead of being like, what oil makes me feel happy, I can get really specific, you know. So in terms of whatever I'm trying to express, you know, you could just like with any artist, you know, you could give a whole room full of artists, you know, some kind of prompt like the last day of school or the beach in the morning or whatever, you know, something evocative. And everybody would like express that somehow using color, or texture, or shape, or rhythm, or whatever. And scent is the same exact way. There's rhythm, there's all the synesthesia with scent. There's rhythm, there's texture, there's temperature, there's everything. Even more so with anything else, because scent is this like wild feral cousin free for all. It's not in any museum. There's no rule books. You know, there's no language for scent. It's just like you can do whatever you want with it. And that's probably why I like it so much is there's no like right or wrong in terms of how to use scent to build up to to express something or to create a narrative, you know.
Yeah.
There's no rules. You can do whatever you want.
Oh my God, you're saying so much. You're really, I mean, this
Now
is
everyone knows why we can never get to the end of
I
anything is
know. I
because
mean, because literally I'm gonna be like, let's go back to the start of all of what you just said. Because I thought the way you said it, because when people think of archetypes, I mean, we probably all have a slightly kind of different definition or relationship with even the concept. And so you described an archetype as a bouquet.
yeah, like
Okay,
a
give
yeah.
it, give us that again, just so we can all kind of, again, from your perspective, when you say archetype, give us exactly what you're thinking in your head.
Yeah, so I think of archetypes as repeating and accessible bouquets of characteristics. And so, like, repeating in that you see it's not an archetype if it only ever happens once. You know, it has to be like across cultures, across times, has to be like a repeating theme, it has to be thematic, right?
Mm.
What was the other thing I said? Oh, accessible. So it also can't be like rare. It has to be it can't be Mount Everest, you know, it has to be just like very can't use the word to describe it. Yeah, it has to be just a native tongue a little bit. Like even if it's not your most leaned on archetype, it has to be like, oh yeah, I get that. Like, you
Mhm.
know, if you met someone who was absolutely not an artist, but you were like, artist, they're like, yeah, got it. I understand what an artist is. That's in the vocabulary, you know,
Yeah,
it's
uh,
understand.
yeah, I mean, just to kind of, right, my understanding is that, right, I mean, this all goes back to Jung, right? And
Yeah.
this sort of psychological concept, for lack of a better way to kind of
Yeah,
describe
yeah,
it.
no, that's what it is. Yeah.
And if I think, at least the way I understand it, is these are um, kind of life experiences or characteristics, or could be people or events, but they are in fact so kind of deeply embedded in
Yes.
everybody's life. So it doesn't matter if you were born, in the middle of New York City or the middle of, sort of a small village halfway around the planet. Like these things are things that exist in some form, some recognizable form, regardless of time, culture, place.
Yes.
Right. Okay. So,
Yes.
okay. So we have this kind of foundation of there's this idea of an archetype, and then you are focusing on specific archetypes
Yeah.
that are meaningful to you, to your practice, to the people you work with. Um, you just kind of mentioned, like, the priestess being the archetype of this kind of upcoming season. So it sounds like things are really kind of you're responding to nature and kind of
Mm,
the cycles of a year.
mm.
So yeah, so let's just kind of go back to that just a smidge. Like
Sure.
this season is coming up um, because of these other sort of interests and kind of knowledge is, like wisdoms that you have. You're like, yeah, you know that this season is about fill in the blank. I want
Yeah.
you to fill in the blank, and then how might you again respond to making that oil, right? So
Yeah.
again, you kind of said it, but I'm just trying to really distill it down so someone else could imagine how they might how the how this could fit in their lives, whether they bought the oil or whether
Yeah.
they blended the oil or whether they just smelled something or somebody out in the middle of nowhere. And we're like, oh yeah. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
so go ahead. So sorry. So the season coming up is
No, that's okay. So, okay, let me back up just a little bit and say that I work with a pre-existing calendar based in kind of ancient British Isles called the Wheel of the Year. And it's based on an agricultural calendar that just divides the year up into 8 seasons instead of four. So you've
okay.
got the solstices, the equinoxes, and then 4 seasons in between those, which they call the cross quarter holy days. And
Mm.
so it's a calendar that's been around forever and a lot of people use it. It's not unique at all to my work. So the Wheel of the Year, and just where I live happens to have like real similar seasonal patterns to the British Isles, I guess, the Southern Appalachians. So it's, winter solstice is a lot like is similar in both places. And so I understood in a deep way the archetypes of the seasons, right? Understood what summer solstice feels like and what winter solstice feels like as a psychology, not just a season. And so, and then separately, once upon a time, I just did like a journal practice of if I, Katie, were a formulaic recipe of archetypes, what would I be? And I wrote out 7 archetypes. I thought about it long and hard. This was when I was living out in the Yom, so I had a lot of time to think off the grid. So I wrote out these 7 archetypes and was like,
of
yeah,
of
this
of 7 archetypes of what kind of makes you.
makes me. Yeah,
Mm.
like I
Right.
am these. I am these. And because I just wanted to know that. I think I was in my early 30s, fresh out of a Saturn return, just like who am I? Who even am I?
And when you again, I think we're for some of us, we kind of know exactly what you're talking about, and for others like myself, I kind of know what you're talking about, but give us a sense of how many archetypes are we selecting from? Are there just hundreds of these things that, if you're steeped in this kind of world, they're sort of, pretty well known. Um, but these are things that sort of are almost like pre-existing, and you're trying to figure out the formula that is you.
Yeah. So there's like gazillions of archetypes.
Okay.
At this point, like I use as an example, I'm dating myself at this point, but like the Sex and the City characters are archetypes, Are you a Carrie or are you a Samantha? Like
Mm.
there are a lot of archetypes. The Zodiac is archetypes. A lot of archetypes. And so the way I learned about archetypes initially was literary as a literary device because I got a degree in literature. And so I was probably thinking about it more in terms of a literary device. Like, what are my characters? What are my like repeating patterns that I'm kind of always in one? I'm always wearing the, guise of one of these characters, it seems
Hmm.
like archetypally speaking. Um, so I came up with these 7 that I felt like I was
Okay.
to just get to know myself. And definitely like through the literature degree, through other classes and experiences I'd been in, I heard these archetypes repeat just enough and noticed that I would perk up when they were mentioned, that I just started paying attention. And I like the normal language of them versus like Aquarius. If you'd never heard of astrology before and someone said Aquarius, you'd be like, what?
Mhm.
But if you've never heard of archetypes before and I said queen, like, queens, pretty much everybody would be like, yeah, I know queen, queen, yeah. Warrior, okay, yeah, I can get behind that. Child, okay, yeah, I get that. You know what I mean? So instead of using like specific archetypes, I just use kind of characters, like again with the literary device.
Mhm.
So then I made oils for each of those just for myself to be like, I just want to, I don't know, play around, see if I can make certain parts of myself prominent, see if I can call upon different functionalities in some kind of cool way when I need it. And then I was like, oh, this whole thing overlays the wheel of the year, kind of in a very tidy way. Like, oh, interesting. Each of these seven oils aligns with one of the seven seasons on the wheel of the year, leaving the eighth season, which is winter solstice, like the void time. That's what we're in right now, is like kind of the sacred nothing, no oil, no nothing, just rest. And so then I had, again, I was living in that, or practicing out of that artist studio, and it was in this old high school, which is beloved to the community and was just totally flooded by Hurricane Helene, but it is coming back. They're totally restoring it. And it was set up, it's the old K through 12 school for that county. So it's like it's big old school with big old hallways that connect the classrooms. So long hallway, classrooms coming off the hallway. So as a studio, you would just walk out of your studio and there would be like somebody out in the hallway having a conversation or walking back to their studio or whatever. And I would always be like, smell this. What do you think? What does this remind you of? I wouldn't tell him anything because blind smelling is like my whole thing, like my whole basis for my business. But I'd go out in the hallway and be like, smell this. What do you think? And the things that people would say back to me, like I blended, this is widely known, like I blended the girl child oil to smell yellow and to smell like laughter. Again, I like to use synesthesia. I take it out in the hallway. This dude that had a studio there at the time, he had a 2-year-old daughter. He smelled it and he goes, it smells like sunshine and happiness. I was like, that's exactly it. Yellow and laughter. He just used slightly different words, So I really like field tested it with this kind of blind smelling thing of like, another one I have is the tantrika. And I took that one over to a friend's house, and there's a bunch of us girls gathered there, and I passed that around and just like in no time at all, we were all hooting and hollering and like the energy just shifted from just smelling it, and it so it's like this works, scent has a profound biological function in the brain, and it has this amazing efficiency in affecting our mood, our behavior, and our memories. So if you, instead of everything being a happy accident, like, oh, Dracar Noir now makes us think of our boyfriends from the 90s, you harness it. You're like, I want to remember, I want to be able to invoke early February with a scent whenever I want to, or I want to be able to invoke this wisdom or this memory or whatever. Like, then you have this tool, then scent is a tool and not just a happy accident. You start to like build a lot of efficiency, but also like beauty and pleasure. And also I'll just add, like, my understanding is that our scent hang on, let me find the right words. Our cells in our brain that are responsible for smelling are some of the only cells in the brain that are capable of neurogenesis. And so we can regrow the parts of our brain where we smell. And so we can grow our brains by smelling.
Hmm.
I mean, definitely fact check that one, but like I remember
No, no,
reading that
everything said on this show is
perfectly true.
100% pre
Yeah.
preordained as truth. Is
You
that?
don't even have to question us. I mean, we
Yeah.
are the most trustworthy sources of information one has ever encountered. Yeah,
Yeah. I feel like I should make one of those disclaimers. This is not financial advice.
right.
Nobody here is a tax accountant.
What do the kids say? IMO, in my opinion.
Yeah, there you go.
The whole thing is IMO.
Hmm. So,
No, I did read that somewhere.
no, no, I think it certainly sounds right. And if it's not sort of verbally correct, it's certainly, I think, philosophically right on,
I
right?
was
I
gonna
mean,
say spiritually clip correct, yes.
um, okay, so I mean, everything you're talking about, I mean, we're like bordering on things that would almost be described as like magic, right? I mean, the idea that you could evoke and invoke or, you know,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
create these whatever it is, right? I mean, you're either you're recreating the past, you're creating the future. So if I understand it correctly, you know, you're standing you're sitting in front of this organ. You're mixing up. You are mixing the archetype, right? You know, it's not that you're saying, um, okay, well, lavender represents this archetype. Like for you, you are kind of breaking that thing down, you know, whether it's a season or one of these archetypes you find within yourself. I'm gonna make one up, right? Since obviously I
Okay.
think, you know,
Yeah.
telling a complete, you know, audience what your seven archetypes are is a little personal. So I'm just gonna make one up. Let's just say that one of them was well, let's just say strength, right? Okay, let's just say strength.
Yes. Okay.
Is that in the realm, or would for you something be like more like no, no? I would have named it more like, you know, the queen, or like you said, like the priestess. Like, is it, you know, just help me so I can make the,
Yeah.
you know, would it
Well,
strength, or you know, give me one that you find better for me to use as an example. Strength
yeah.
or queen.
Well, first of all, the archetypes are totally all over my website, and it's like my whole business I based on those seven, so they're
Oh,
not a
okay.
secret.
Okay. Okay. Well,
They're not a secret.
I didn't know how personal.
No,
Um,
I appreciate that. I appreciate that. But just so everyone knows, like it's, it's the whole thing because I realized that everyone related to them and that's why they were archetypes. But for your question, like, you know, yeah, strength. That's a great one.
so
But there's
let's
so
pick
many
that.
types of strength, right? There's really, really solid, stable, still strength, like a rock. But then there's like flexible strength, like when we have these windstorms out here and I'm watching these huge trees, I can't believe their range of motion, swaying like crazy. They're strong too. And so if you were making an archetypal case for strength, you would have to consider all kinds of strength. There's
Hmm.
the strength that is stable and still like a rock, and then there's also strength that is flexible like a tree. And then there's also strength that is enduring like the river carving out the Grand Canyon over and over and over. There's so many kinds of strength. And that's when it becomes an archetype,
Hmm.
as
So,
you build dimensionality into it.
I mean, this is why I think collections are fascinating, right? And that's why they're fun to learn about. Because for most people, if you're not a collector, maybe you just don't kind of see it this way. Maybe if you're a beginning collector, maybe you just haven't hit this kind of particular stage. Um, but the idea that what you collect teaches you, right? And so
Mm,
obviously it's not. it's not passive. I mean, it's active learning, right? Obviously, if you're
Yeah.
just again collecting salt and pepper shakers, and you never give it any other thought other than I bought these things at a flea market. Again, look at the nice mushrooms. Okay, that's one thing, right? But if you start to, I mean, what you're talking about, and it's why it's, let's face it. I mean, I think it's why we're we're kind of understanding a little better why this is, makes up a core part of you. Um, is that it's stimulating internal conversations and questioning and coming up with answers and clarifying. And I mean, I just find that that's so, I mean, what an amazing thing to get out of a collection. And the more we speak, the more I'm convinced that you are a collector. Um, I think from my point of view, it's the utility part
Yeah.
that almost seems to be, kind of muddying the waters potentially. But I mean, the idea that, like, okay, so you're thinking, and so you're thinking and you're learning and you're questioning, and okay, now there's, 13 different types of strength that you can kind of come up with, and you kind of know, like, eventually I'm going to come across a 14th. But let's just
Yeah.
say, you go, okay, well, I am interested in this flexible strength,
Yes.
right? Now you mix this just briefly, without giving away, any proprietary formulas or anything, but like
Right.
how would you sort of approach that from almost like a technical point of view, right? I think we understand the poetics behind it,
Yeah.
but almost like the trial and error or whatever you need to do, that's kind of point A. And then
Hmm.
let's just do that first. Just give us the technical, what are you working with? Bowls,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
test
yeah.
tubes,
Okay.
like what's happening
Yeah.
here?
I love it. But also, before you asked me that question, you said so many things, and I wanted to say so many things in return. And I appreciate you being like, answer this question, because I really had a lot to say. Well, one thing I am going to say really quick is like, because of the utility, would you say I collect groceries? Like, I buy groceries and use them. I buy these oils and use them in my products. But anyway, back to your question.
I will
Uh,
quickly answer. I would say
okay.
yes. I would say yes if there was a certain intention
Okay.
behind the way in which you're buying groceries.
Yeah. Okay. Because a grocery run is a curated experience, and it doesn't matter that you're going to consume it.
Yeah.
It's like you're curating a collection of groceries.
I mean, you shotgunning sour cream, which I know you adore.
God,
I
you
don't know
busted
that
me in
I
front
don't
of
know that
millions of people.
Yeah.
First of all, it has never been a shotgun.
Right.
Oh my God. Okay.
Anyway,
That's
yes. Okay.
hilarious.
So you're in front of your
Yes.
organ, and
All right.
how are you mixing up flexible strength?
Flexible strength. So, first of all, the thing with essential oils is that they're almost all expensive and they're all precious. It takes a lot of resources to make oils. So, we don't really want to waste them
Hmm.
with a lot of dropping and blending. So, the first thing you do actually is so we use these like scent strips. If you can picture just like maybe something toothy like watercolor paper, like a half an inch wide piece of and maybe like 4 inches long piece of paper that would just hold a little bit of oil for you to smell.
Hmm.
You would start by dropping the oils that you think you're gonna, well, actually, you start by just leaving the oils in the bottle, taking the lids off, and putting the bottles together. Like you're gonna use 4 different oils. You just open the lids and smell all those open bottles together. That's the first thing you do. You don't waste any material at all. And if you're like, yeah, that's cool. Now I want to get a little bit more specific and know what the formula could shape up to be. Because when you blend essential oils, when you formulate essential oils, you're talking drops, like a drop. You blend like something with maybe like at the most 20 drops in it. Like your whole formula is composed of 20 drops, maybe. Some of my formulas are only 6 oils, like 6 drops, and then you multiply from there. So to determine the drops, you put a drop of oil on each scent strip. So if you're working with four oils, you'd have four scent strips. And then you're literally holding them all together under your nose. And then some of them you're holding them farther and farther away because they're very strong and you want less of it. So you have this like lineup under your nose, your eyes are closed. You're moving these scent strips like away from your nose, further and further, or closer and closer, and you're smelling that. And you get kind of this mental image of like, okay, this is how I want these to show up. And when I'm teaching an aromatherapy class, I teach these like intuitive aromatherapy classes for, there's an herb school around town where I teach. And some other places I say, do you want this to be the metaphor just went right out of my head. Do you want this to be like Gladys Knight and the Pips? In other words, do you want an oil to be like the front runner and then everybody else's backup? Or do you want this to be like, and now you give me a band where they all sing together? What's a good band where they all sing together?
The Eagles.
The Eagles. Fuck, I almost said
And
that. And I was
and
like,
and we're and
Steve,
we're not dating ourselves at all, by the way.
at all. No, you should see the people go, who the hell is Gladys Knight and the Pips? And then I'm like, you need to educate yourself because you can't not know that. So your blend is either like, you know, you mentioned lavender earlier. So let's say you're blending something that's going to be very easily recognizably lavendery, but then there's all these like supporting oils under it that kind of amplify it or boost it or alter it in such a way that it's still very beautiful, but they are still there, but really all they're doing is supporting the lavender, Gladys Knight. And so that's one way to blend something. And then the other way is to just make a completely different animal, which almost all of my blends are. And one of my favorite games that has developed over the years is telling people that they're right or wrong about what they're smelling in the blend. Because people always like to go, lavender. And I'm like, there's no lavender in this. I have one oil that everyone goes, mint. There's no mint in it.
Hmm.
And it's an interesting, we don't have to get into this, but like it's an interesting little sort of adventure into the mind of like, well, how wed to certainty are you? Like how much of
Hmm.
this, how important is that? And then also, how important is it that you're identifying a component? And the example I use is like if you went up to a painting and you pointed out that you saw yellow in the painting, like unless you were, visually impaired, that just wouldn't be an interesting thing to notice. Like, oh my God, there's
Yeah.
yellow in this painting. Like
Right.
nobody's going to stop the presses. No one's impressed. So the same is true for like pointing out a component of a scent blend or even food for that matter. It's like, yeah, cool. There's yellow in the painting. So what? What are you feeling? What is the artist feeling? Like there's a lot to talk about, not the yellow paint, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of parallels between what you're talking about and sort of color vision.
Yeah,
And you're right, exact. Okay, so you're mixing this thing up. You got your bottles, you smell them kind of like in the bottles together first, then you're putting drops on the strips, and you're
yeah,
kind of getting close and far away, and so I'm assuming as this goes on, you're kind of maybe sort of let me take this one, let me take this drop out, let
yes,
me get okay. And so
yeah,
you finally get to and again, like the magic of how the selection, right? I mean, this definitely gets into. First of all, we're definitely gonna have a part two of this at some point because, yeah, I mean, like literally, this is where the door opens to this discussion of creativity,
yeah, yeah,
which will, I mean, that's the next episode that we talk about, right? Uh,
yeah,
or at least one of the one of the things, but without opening that door too much, let's just say you have made decisions, and now you have come to this moment where you're like, yes, this is the blend. Okay. What do you do? Let's just say this is something that you are going to make for yourself for the
Yeah.
season, for the upcoming season? Is it just now you have these 6 drops and you do you add something to this? Do you dilute
Yeah.
it? Do you just add more drops? Like how exactly does this happen?
Oh, I love it. This is great. See, you're like an aromatherapy student. You just didn't even know it. So you always want to dilute essential oils. So we're always gonna add it to a carrier oil like jojoba oil. We're gonna add it to salt. We're gonna add it to like if we're gonna make a mask or something, like a clay base. Always add, always dilute essential oil. And that
Okay.
just saves the skin
Mm,
and it also extends the material, right? So if it's diluted, we have more essential oil to use later. It's not as expensive. So if I'm blending something for myself, I've got a formula in my head of like, if I'm blending 1 ounce of something like a massage oil, something that I'm going to put all over my skin, not just little touches of perfume, but like all over, I'm going to put like maybe 15 drops or so total into an ounce of carrier oil, like
mm,
sesame.
mhm,
Um, but if I'm blending an anointing oil, which is like a perfume, I might put um, like 40 drops into an ounce or more,
mm,
just depending on the coverage, right?
mm,
A bath, like if you're putting oils into bath salts, you're going to put a ton in there because it's got to be diluted into a whole bathtub worth of water.
mm,
So the salt is going to smell like, holy moly, there's a lot of oil in this. But yeah, it has to be in like gallons and gallons of water eventually, some point, you know. So you're always thinking about like dilution and how do you want the oils to show up in the end product. So if I'm making something for myself, my drops are going to stay around like 10, 15 drops total. Um, if I'm making a batch, then I have to get my calculator out and I start doing some math of like, you know, looking at like ounces of oils or milliliters of oils.
mm.
Um, and then I'm using a graduated cylinder for that.
Okay, so that's awesome. I mean, I think we got a pretty good uh so now you have okay, so now we're gonna shift gears just a touch from the technical back to the poetic, I think, right? So you've
Yes.
made this oil, you've made strength, and not just strength, you've made flexible strength.
Flexible strength.
Right. Now, um, is this and so is this something that you have, whatever, 4, 5, 10, 20 of these things that now are in front of you, right? So you had your organ, which was sort of like the individual components. I mean, that's like the recipe station. Then somewhere else, or maybe it's, I don't know, close by, you have this rack of oils, these archetype oils that you've created. And in my mind, like what I'm picturing, and I want you to kind of tell me if this is true or not, it's a Tuesday and you need to go, I don't know. You're gonna you know that you have a meeting that day that might be slightly confrontational. You
Mm.
kind of know what's coming, but you want to handle it with, kind of all the kind of grace and dignity you can deal with it with, because maybe this is a difficult person. Do you reach for this oil and put it on, and throughout the day it kind of gives you this thing that you're thinking about, or am I like way off base?
No, you're exactly right. And that's why I call the oils tools, is because it kind of steadies your consciousness or it directs your focus or it reminds you of your capacity in this like really specific way and also this legitimately biological way. Like, when we smell something, we're not just having like emotion about it, our nervous system is getting involved. So when they say lavender is calming, like, yes, it has components in it that would make any body calm, even if you didn't have a sense of smell. But if you build the association with lavender as calming, when you smell it, your whole nervous system is calming, or your whole nervous system feels steeled and strong and flexible. So when you're using these oils as tools, what you're actually doing is like training your brain and training your nervous system to have this like immediate fluency with the scent so that when you need to be solid because you're going to be around someone confrontational, you smell this oil and it's not Dumbo's magic feather. It's you have influenced your nervous system in this very biological way. And so that's why I call them tools. And I think it is magic. It's like earthling magic. It's like figuring out these like cool uh I guess maybe the kids would call them hacks, you know? Like for the body and for the psyche and the whole system where you can really help yourself in this way that seems magical that you smell this oil and suddenly you're clear. You smell this oil and suddenly you're resilient or suddenly you're fun. Yes. Yes.
Suddenly you're fun. I love that.
Yes. I have an oil and suddenly you're fun. Yes. I mean, it's no joke. Like I will be in a circle passing around all these oils and I'll pass certain ones around and I can just be like three, two, one. Everybody's giggling and they don't. That's again why I use the blind smelling so much is because um there's so much more gravity and so much more trust when you smell an oil, have a reaction or a response to it, have a whole narrative about it, and then learn what it is. And then learn that its intention is exactly what you just experienced. Like everybody's
Mm.
having fun then. Instead of this oil will make you feel strong. Yes, I believe this oil will make me feel strong. That's different. That's like hypnosis or something, you know? That's Dumbo's magic feather, you know?
Yes, yes,
So
yes.
but if you don't tell people what it is and they still have that response, then you're like, I don't even need to tell you what it is. You are living it. It's
Yeah.
happening. It is just happening, you know? So
Uh, okay. Yeah, I mean it's really I mean it really is fascinating. I mean, I gotta say, like, I mean, it just I love I just love this idea of this collection, and I am gonna put that name onto it.
do
Um,
it. I approve. It's a collection.
um, well, and I guess in my brain, like, I think the reason it sort of enters the realm of collect. I mean, there's a lot of reason why, the display, right? The way you
Yeah,
talked about how beautiful, somebody else's display. I mean, I think collecting often there is kind of this display element to it, not just for
yeah.
yourself, but for other people. There's certainly a very strong emotional component to a collection. You obviously we've definitely nailed that one. Um, it
Mm,
teaches while you're kind of interacting with it. I mean, I think that maybe doesn't need to be it doesn't need to be an element of every collection, but I think ones that are meaningful, it probably is.
mm,
I think I could go on and on. But I also know that if you were to encounter an oil that you hadn't encountered before, that
mm,
helped you to be more fluent in this language,
mm-hmm,
you would want it and
mm-hmm.
you would add it to the grouping. Maybe we don't call it a collection, but we would add it to this grouping of bottles that you already have. And so, yeah, I mean, it's so I guess what I'm getting at is I think I'm kind of convinced that this is something I would be interested in, and
Yeah,
probably a lot of people would be interested in. So,
yeah.
I do have a bigger question
Okay.
that will kind of wrap things up a bit. But before I ask that question, I just want to kind of hit you with some quick, uh, almost like technical questions, right? So again,
Okay.
imagine you're 16 or you're 28 or you're 65 and you're listening to this and you go, God, so much of what was just said is something I think I'd be really interested in. And I
Yeah.
think I'd like to kind of test the waters a bit. Okay. So again,
Yeah.
these are just kind of like quick hitters. Um, One, is there a typical starter version for someone, like if someone listens to this, they go, yeah, I want to try this. Is there a starter pack of oils that they would buy that they could start to experiment with?
Yeah. I mean, in this day and age, so many stores sell essential oils. You don't have to like mail order them like back in the day. I mean, I would just go to your local, probably everyone lives near like a Whole Foods or some kind of health food type store,
Hmm.
and just have fun smelling the oils that they have and buy some of those. Like, they're not going to have anything crazy rare or expensive. They're going to have a pretty standard, accessible little collection right there. They're probably going to have like 10 essential oils and just smell them. And whichever one lights you up, get it.
Okay. And would
Yeah.
you would you recommend that I guess kind of in the context that we're talking about, would you recommend that they buy things that have already been blended or so you recommend like, oh yeah, go in there and buy that little bottle that says calm on it from, Bed
Hmm.
Bath and Beyond or whatever, or you're like, no,
Hmm.
no, 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 buy lavender and then buy, cardamom. Like,
Yeah. I
what's the
think it
recommendation?
depends on like a couple things. So if you got, turned on by this and you're just like, I want the magic of essential oils, then yes, go buy pre-blended things and just make sure they're blended with essential oils. So that's your project. Like if you're one of the people listening and you're like, I just want to use essential oil stuff, then your project is just to read the ingredients of whatever you're buying, whether it's a little blend or bathing salt, and just make sure it's essential oils, and then you're good to go. But if you're listening to this and you're like, I like the kind of mad scientist part of this, I want to formulate and blend, then you're looking at buying like individual oils. Or if you just want to like kind of get plant spirit medicine with it and really get to know a plant through its aromatic properties, then you would want like one bottle of cardamom and just like vibe up. With that, you're just going to be kind of in a conversation with that cardamom, learning it, listening to it. And then you're working with terroir. And this is where collection gets really cool, is you're ordering like, for example, I have one company that I like to order from because they'll have lavender, for example, from like 5 different countries. So you can get terroir like you do with wine with essential oils. So in other
Mm.
words, the land and the elements of the land are influencing the plant. It's the same exact plant, the same genus and species, the same plant, but the essential oil smells completely different because of the terroir. So you can really nerd out and go deep with oil
Nice.
collecting. Hmm.
I think you just made the that's going to be the Instagram little audio clip because that's so fascinating.
That's
Uh,
right. And then if you get really into this and you look up Mandy Aftel, who I mentioned earlier, she is someone who proper like uh how do I want to say this? Like if there's been a perfume collector or even a botanical materials collector who is died or they're done with their collection, they call her first.
hmm,
And so she has like old patchouli, like something that is meant to age, base notes age really well. You can go to her place and smell like 100-year-old or older patchouli.
wow.
Like she has she has a museum. She made a scent museum out
Hmm.
of her garage in Berkeley. It's amazing. She is devoted. She is a true collector. Yeah. She has an actual legitimate museum of scent and a collection of scent. And every now and then, if you're collecting, she'll release a rare scent on her website and you can buy it.
Wow.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah. Yeah, you more and more you're convincing me that this is a collection. Right. I mean, well, again, when you say things like that, okay, so what what would you say, someone getting into this world, what might be some of the common mistakes that you would want them to be like, hey, yeah, just avoid that. Like,
Dude, these are good questions you're asking. Yeah, so you're basically just wanting to make sure that you're buying really quality essential oils. So you want to buy oils that are like not all the same price. Like you want all the prices to be different because the price indicates the yield and the harvest of the essential oil. So like citrus should never cost the same as rose or something like that. So all different prices.
hmm,
You want to make sure the label has like the Latin name, the country of origin, the method of extraction on it. In my opinion, I would avoid any multi-level marketing companies that are selling essential oils. So no pyramid scheme oils. And let's see what else. I think a common mistake, I don't think it's as prevalent as it was back in the day, but you want to make sure you're buying just a bottle of essential oil and not essential oil that's in carrier oil or in alcohol. You
hmm,
want to make sure it's only essential oil.
okay.
And what you're going to find at like the Whole Foods or something is a pretty decent collection of oils that will get you started. But, you know, one way that okay, I'm relenting, this is a collection, is that what you're doing is you're in the same way that someone would collect wine or something that has um, what am I trying to say here? Better and better quality of taste. The same is true for essential oils. So, like, go buy a bottle of anything as long as it's just essential oil in the bottle, and then go buy that same essential oil. Let's just say everybody listening decides to start with cardamom because I said it. Start a cardamom collection. That would be the coolest thing that you could do is start collecting cardamoms so that you are like, okay, this company consistently has better cardamom. Go with them. And
Hmm.
then consistently, I like the cardamom that's out of, I don't remember where my cardamom is from right now, Madagascar versus Egypt. I like the Madagascar cardamom. Then you just feel like the most specific badass ever because you're like, I prefer Egyptian cardamom. Like who doesn't want to say that?
Yeah, I love that. I mean, my feeling on like, the generic, hey, let's all get into microbrews, that kind
Yes.
of, like all of a sudden everybody and their mom is, wearing beard oil or whatever. Like,
Yes.
I love the fact that, yeah, that would, and yes, if I got into a conversation with somebody and they started telling me why their cardamom from Madagascar, really, kind of touch them in a way that cardamom from whatever the the base of mouth
Egypt. Yeah.
whatever didn't.
Egyptian cardamom just doesn't blend with vanilla as well as the Madagascar cardamom,
Oh, that's so good. Yeah. Oh man, that's awesome.
It's the same as any sommelier, any whiskey collector. It's like they're aware. So the act of collecting makes the act of collecting is just all about variations on a theme, right? Like how
Mm,
many salt and pepper shakers can you possibly have?
yeah.
Lots, and that's the fun of it. But the focus on the variation of the theme ultimately attunes you to very subtle nuances of that theme that most people would miss. So, like if you've never had wine before and you drink three different glasses of wine right in front of you, you're like, I mean, it all tastes like wine, I guess. But like a sommelier is like, can pinpoint the differences because they've been collecting not only the wines, but the experience of that information in their brain, and they're very attuned to those nuances. Same with essential oils, like same with any kind of sensory collection, maybe. Well, I guess
Yeah.
every collection is sensory, but
Right, right. But
like,
this is elevated in a way that's it's the focus, right? It's not. I mean, that's what's interesting about this is it's not many collections are at least on the surface visual it's dominated by the visual, right? I mean
right,
it's
right.
the visual is really the thing that's going to jump out at you first, where in this case, right? I mean, maybe you might put them in very pretty, and interesting bottles, and that's another part of the whole collecting and collection that we haven't even gone into, which we'll save for again an additional episode. But just, we did talk about the organ, and how that's displayed, but the bottles that you could buy, right? I mean,
Mhm.
really, like there's so much about the display of this thing, but in general, the the focus is on this, act of scent or the act of smelling, So you talked a little bit about you kind of touched upon it. So maybe just tell me if I'm correct in these statements. Cost, knowledge, kind of where you live, very low barriers in that regard, at
Hmm.
least to get into it. Would we say that that's correct? So for
Totally.
under $100, you could like
Oh,
start
you
a.
could have a collection for under $100.
Okay,
Yes.
okay, fantastic. Ethical considerations. I think that's, kind of things that you were talking about might be on the bottle themselves, like where I think that's why you kind of brought up like where it came from, what the extraction methods are. Am
Mhm.
I correct in saying that?
Yeah, so the country of origin would be important, just, if you were having like any kind of if you knew of any like political thing or environmental thing that would make you want to lean toward or away from a certain country. But also the idea that a lot of essential oils are monocropped, meaning like it's one crop over acres and acres of land.
Mm.
And a lot of that, so that's kind of not great for the environment. And then there's an argument that you'd want to use organic essential oils because you at least don't want the acres and acres of land sprayed with pesticides. And there's the idea that pesticides are potentially like lipophilic, meaning oil bonding, and you're using essential oils. So there could be traces of lipophilic pesticides in them. So I also try to get organic or wild harvested essential oils when possible. So that's another like environmental concern is just, and those are going to be more expensive, just like vegetables that are organic are more expensive, but it's the same kind of, it's the same ethic.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So for somebody who, this is important in their collection, number one, you're looking at the label. Make sure it's labeled in a way that has information. And I mean, unless you're like,
Yeah.
literally at the source, that kind of, you can like look out
Right.
the window and, see the field. And a couple of
Exactly.
things you're looking for. One, like you said, sort of maybe geographic regions that you may want to support or not support. But maybe more common might be things like organic, non-organic, the monocropping. I mean, is that something that you would be able to tell on a label, or is that something you would have to ask the person who was selling you?
You can just assume it. Just
Oh,
assume it.
okay, got
Like
it.
unless it's like a conifer needle, that comes from the forest. Like this is something that is grown like wheat is grown or
Mhm.
soybeans are grown. It's like acres and acres
Okay,
of whatever it is.
so if it says wildly or wild harvest, that means it's not.
Right. That means it's just, usually conifers are going to be wild harvested, and that means that they just go up into the forests of Canada in the dead of winter when the conifers are producing tons of essential oil and they're just harvesting the boughs of the trees
Hmm.
that grow in the woods. So that's wild, you know.
Okay.
Usually tree anything that's like another topic that we can get into another time is like um the morphology of the oil. So like you could find essential oil in the leaves or the bark or the wood or the roots or the fruit
Hmm.
peel. It's all over the plant. So you would, if you were getting really into that, which is like a whole course of study that I teach and like to practice, you'd want to make sure that whoever you're buying the essential oils from says where on the plant it's from too.
Hmm. Okay.
So that just adds another
No,
specificity.
that's awesome. I mean, that's
Yeah.
again, episode 2 is deep dive, that kind
Yeah.
of thing. And
Episode
I'm,
two.
I'm sure
Again, you're
there's
so
some people who are
helpful.
like, deep dive. My God, you've been talking for 2 hours
Well,
about the same freaking thing.
exactly.
How
Like, have you
deeper are
met
we
us?
going?
This is
um,
nothing.
I was gonna say that's funny, right? I mean, this is definitely a window into
This is a fraction.
oh my God. But this is actually, I mean, again, for me, this is actually very fun, because it is so focused. As I mentioned kind of earlier. Um, okay, a couple other of these kind of quick hitters that have to
Okay.
do with well, a quick hitter in what we were just talking about. Fakes, forgeries, things of that nature. Something we need to worry
Mhm.
about. How do we tell? Or not really something you need to kind of concern yourself with.
I love it. Fakes and forgeries. Um, yeah, I think that these days, I don't think there's a lot of fake essential oil out there. Like if it says lavender essential oil, it's probably going to be that. But people just need to know to distinguish between fragrance oil or perfume oil versus essential oil or botanical perfumery. So, fragrance oil and perfume oil is the industry term for synthetic.
Oh, okay. Wow, that's great to
So,
know.
yeah, so if you're looking at a little bottle and it looks like it's got the, same bottle type that all the essential oils have and everything, you still want to make sure it's not fragrance oil if you don't want fragrance oil. Some people do. So,
Right.
no shade on that. I'm just saying, like, if you're not wanting it, just make sure you're not buying fragrance or perfume oil. Because, some people have like skin sensitivities and allergies and stuff, and you just have to be really careful about what you put on your skin and what you breathe into your lungs.
Hmm.
And so if you're putting perfume oil into a diffuser, you're not breathing in essential oil. You're breathing in something synthetic, like I don't know if it's necessary. I'm not trying to say it's like bad. It's just not essential oil. So yeah, fakes would be that. And then, there's a lot of misinformation around aromatherapy and essential oils because it's not a regulated field. Like
Hmm.
essential oils kind of came into the country. I learned this from a teacher and I thought it was an accurate way to say it. It's kind of like in the gift shop genre,
Hmm.
less pharmaceutical or medicinal or even herbal and more of like a little gifty thing. And so it didn't really get regulated. So, in an attempt to legitimize it over the years, people would use phrases like therapeutic grade. That's not a thing. That's a that's a fake. There's no
Okay.
such thing as therapeutic grade, but it's a term that gets thrown around a lot by certain companies just to as an attempt to legitimize, their product. So therapeutic grade's not a thing.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
That's great. That's actually funny because I kind of thought that was almost a throwaway question, but you said some things in there that are really,
Yeah.
really helpful. So just to
No.
recap, tell me just the words that would mean it's synthetic are
Perfume oil or fragrance oil.
okay. And if it's not synthetic, it's kind of not that it would be everything else, but it should say essential oil.
It should say essential oil Or like it depends on the method of extraction. So you could also have a CO2 extract or an attar or an
Mm,
infusion. There's variations on the theme, but in terms of just that starting collection under $100, you're looking for steam distilled essential oils, or in the case of citrus, cold pressed essential oils.
awesome.
There's also no such thing as fruit essential oil. There's not plum essential oil or apple essential oil. So if someone has you smelling a perfume and they're like, I used apple, it's a fake.
Okay. All right. That's okay. That's awesome. It's very interesting. Um, okay. Storage, damages, protecting, kind of all in that little basket. I have my, I've spent my whatever, $60.
Yeah.
I have my essential oils. I'm happy with where they were sourced, how they were sourced or extracted. Um, I'm really excited about these things. How do I keep them and make sure I don't damage them, right? Like what do I need to do? Is there something special I need to do, or can I just put them anywhere in my house?
Dude, these are such good questions. Yes, there's a bunch of stuff you have to do to protect essential oils. So when you're thinking about your essential oils, you have to think of them as produce. It's like
Hmm.
liquid plant. And so they're eventually going to go bad just because they are botanical. And so to slow that natural composting process down, you're going to keep them away from light, heat, and air. So
Hmm.
the way to keep them away from light is they need to be in an amber bottle, not in a windowsill. So a colored glass bottle, amber's best, not in direct light. So don't line up your essential oils in your windowsill.
Hmm.
Keep them in a nice little shelf cupboard. The way to keep them away from heat is don't have them like on your car dashboard or on your radiator. It's going to make them go bad. So just keep them like just sort of room temperature or cooler, you know. A
Hmm.
way to keep them away from air is to keep them in smaller and smaller and smaller bottles so there's not a bunch of air space on the top of the bottle. Like you can picture a bottle that's full and a bottle that's half full. A bottle that's half full is half full of air. And so as you are going down in the level of your bottle, over a short period of time, you don't have to worry about it. Like under 3 years, for everything except for citrus, citrus goes off faster than the other ones. For everything but citrus, you can do whatever you want in terms of the air in the bottle. But after, I mean, maybe even 2 years, that air is going to start to do some funky things. And you're going to want to decant that oil, just pour it into a smaller bottle to get that air out of there.
Okay.
So if you buy a little thumb-sized bottle from Whole Foods of oil, just use it. That's the other thing is essential oils. This is where it becomes a collection and not a collection. Use them because they'll change and they won't be as good unless it's a base oil, and then you can find those in the tombs of Egypt. But if it's a flower oil, any of the like lighter oils, you want to use it. So
Hmm.
you can't buy an expensive thing of chamomile and then 15 years later still have it. You can't have your cake and eat it too with essential
Hmm.
oils. You have to just use them and buy more. They
Okay.
won't they won't hold.
I love that. I
Yeah.
love anytime someone can reference cake. Eat your cake, right? I mean, it's exactly I mean, like literally, you're saying eat your cake. You can't put it in the refrigerator and
Eat your
have it in
cake.
6 months. Eat your freaking cake.
That's the
Enjoy your
deal with
cake.
collecting essential oils. You have to eat the cake. Yep.
Eat the cake. Okay, so last question in this little kind of group of someone who just wants to kind of figure it out and get right into it. Um, is there something that you and your peers as, we would consider experts, something that you're looking at, considering that a beginner wouldn't generally kind of think about?
Oh, interesting. Um, I think maybe I would, okay, for example, there's this one company I like to order from, Eden Botanicals. I highly recommend if anyone's interested in starting a serious collection. They're amazing.
Can I ask you a question then? I mean, is this
Yeah,
like show notes? Can I put a few
yeah.
links to some of the sources that you find to be
Oh, yeah.
reputable? Okay, cool.
Yeah, that's a big company. That's not like my secret farmer or something like that. That's like a nice big company.
Okay, so
So,
in the show notes, we will put places of reputable spots to get some of these things. Okay, great.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And I've got a couple other sources I can give you after.
Cool.
But um I think that someone just starting out would be maybe like overwhelmed or intimidated by just the sheer number of oils available. And they might be like um tempted to kind of dismiss some of them just because they would just have to like learn what the even word is and look into it
Hmm.
in a way that they're not ready yet. And so more than like quality or a country, I'm not that good. Like probably again, probably Mandy would be like, cardamom from Madagascar. Well, we haven't seen that since 1936. Like, I don't know that, but somebody like her would. But I would be like, ooh, they have orris root, something like that, whereas someone just starting would be like, I don't want orris root. What even is orris root? But if you came over and you were hanging out in my apothecary and we were drinking tea and I was like, smell this. And then you were like, what's that? That just, I just saw stars and I was like, orris root. And you're like, I'm gonna get some of that. It's very sensory, and weird. And that's one of the reasons that I love studying. I'm totally plugging Mandy a bunch here, but um, one of the ways that she teaches is she just lets you have access to her full organ. And she
Mm.
has hundreds of oils and she has the weirdest stuff you have ever heard of. And you can just smell it. Like you're not buying it, you're not taking it home. You're just like giving it to your brain for a second. Like this is a thing. Death, like, okay, there's this oil called, this is not botanical, but it is carbon based. It's called Choya Nak. And it
Hmm.
is the essence of burnt seashells.
Oh, wow.
Like, why would you want that? And then you smell it and you're like, I only want this. Or like it's just weird stuff that I think when you're first starting out, you're like, um, just kind of getting things that might be more familiar. Or
Mm.
you're like one thing this isn't what you asked, but one thing I would recommend is like for example with citruses, just get all the citruses. Let that be your whole collection. And
Mm.
just be like, oh my God, like one of the exercises I would have students do sometimes with like just working with synesthesia is I would give them scent strips with like all the citrus oils I had, which would be maybe like 6 or 8 at the time. And I would say, arrange these according to musical notes.
Mm.
And they would,
That's awesome.
and it would work. It's like, so like, have fun with like flights of things, like all the citrus oils or like every lavender that this company sells from all these countries. Just get the lavenders and just see, like what are there again, like noticing the nuances of
Yeah.
the variations,
I
the
mean, it's so
nuances of the
fun
themes.
because what's that? Sorry.
No, I just said nuances of the themes. It's okay.
Nuances of a theme. Yeah, no, I think that's something that, first of all, there's tons of stuff that I didn't know that you talked about today that really is so, which is fascinating, really intriguing, it kind of makes you want to know more. But I think uh probably the biggest takeaway for me is, well, the storytelling I think is that's a mind blower to me. I love that. I love that. And not just that, but the storytelling over time, that the
Yeah,
layers and the unfolding and that's God, my God, that's amazing. Um,
yeah.
but if there was a second kind of point to that, it is the nuance and meaning you could sort of start a collection or continue a collection in a really, really personal way. Like it's not a
Hmm.
matter of just like, oh, go buy these 50 and now your collection is finished. But in
Right.
fact, there's so many different ways that you can, kind of put this collection together. I think that's really amazing. And it probably is a good transition into, I guess, the last question that I have for you. And let's just again, we're gonna do a part two of this at some point because
Okay.
there's so much. But we're like a little over 2 hours and I mean again, it's such a fun window into like, I mean if this was the only episode ever made, I'd be like, yep, success.
Oh man, that's
No,
awesome. I
totally. I mean,
love
it's so, so, so amazing.
that. I made a podcast. There's only one person I interview 2 hours long once a week.
Yeah, it'll
It's
be like
great.
that. Remember the Wu-Tang Clan made like an one album and literally they just made one copy and they auctioned it off for like $1 million,
Oh my
something like
God,
that. So
exactly.
maybe that's the marketing route for
I
this.
like it.
But okay, so I might be burying the headline here, but you did have a rare oil collection. So beyond kind of the 50 that you're using for utility, you had
Yeah,
this rare oil collection. And so I'm gonna let you just kind of talk about the following two things, and that'll kind of close this chapter of this conversation. But number one, tell us about the rare oil collection, right? Kind of
yeah.
why, how it was acquired, maybe give us some highlights, things that were really kind of special to you. And
Hmm.
then, as you alluded to, you have recently just given it away. And just so describe this thing, and then just tell us why you gave it away.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm sure I'll have a
Okay.
follow-up question clearly, but let's just kind of go down that road for a bit.
Okay. So, like this rare oil collection, if any like actual perfumers or anybody are listening to this, it's nothing that they would even sneeze at. Like it was a collection of rare oils, but not any kind of museum worthy thing. But it was like, when I would go out to Berkeley to study with Mandy, she would open up her collection and let us buy some things and buy some weird things. So I had some of that, and I was commissioned to design some scents over the years that I needed to get some like I love the word weird. I don't mean weird ever to mean bad. So for these commissions, I would get some weird, cool stuff that I'd never smelled before. And I wouldn't use the whole bottle, and so I would just keep it, or I would uh just have like somehow someone would give something to me, or I'd stumble upon something really beautiful, some really beautiful oil. And so over the years, I got like, I don't know, I not so much, maybe another like 50 bottles or less of these weird, cool, rare, random oils. Like for example, I had um a little bottle of castoreum, which is it's beaver balls. Like there's in perfumery, they use a lot of like glands and musk and stuff. And I had some of that stuff because I was just curious about it. Like, ambergris comes from like whale vomit. There's like perfume is weird and cool in that way. Um, there's another one I'm trying to remember that I had that's like a type of like cat shit. Africa Stone. Africa Stone is a type of cat feces. I just
I'm
had weird stuff like that. And let's see, maybe a year and a half ago, I did a major. rehaul of my apothecary. I painted it. Um, I just kind of like reorganized it. I brought like a lot of beauty into it. I painted the inside of my oil cabinet like India pink. And in the process of that, I um was just kind of organizing a bunch and was putting oils here and there and didn't remember where I put half of them and really only kept out the utility oils. And then I didn't miss any of these oils that I put away. I wasn't like, ooh, where's that rose I have? Where's that choya nak? Where's that burnt birch tar? Never was like, not even like wanting to blend with it, just wanting to smell it,
Hmm.
never thought of them. And so, like, a couple weeks ago, whenever everyone in the whole world is like, not in the whole world, that's not what I mean, but like when all the people are getting their Christmas presents ready, I was up on my step stool on a top shelf looking through this basket, and I was like, oh, there's all those oils. Like, had not thought of them in this whole time, had not wondered where they were, craved them, missed them, or anything. So
Hmm.
I was like, yeah, there is a part of the collector's cycle. This can be episode number 3, where you release the collection back into the stream,
Hmm.
because
Yeah, totally.
I love treasure hunting and I rely on people to release their treasures into the stream because I like to find them. And
Yeah.
so, in that spirit, and I mean that it was conscious. I was like, nope, I'm keeping these for no reason. There is no reason. There's not a point of pride. It's not an investment. I'm not going to use them one day. There's nothing. There's literally no reason. And I have a niece who is in her young 20s and she's interested in scent. So I just gave it to her, the whole collection.
Wow.
And I put it in a Tupperware, like a plastic thing, and just gave it to her for Christmas, like any other Christmas present. And I just thought, when I was in my young 20s, when I was in massage school and getting into essential oils, if somebody had given me that collection, I would have loved it. I would have valued it and appreciated it. It would have like educated my brain. It would have been a, I would have introduced a level of sophistication into my brain so early. And I thought, well, I would love that for her, to just be able to like smell these things, to know even that they existed. Like it was educational. She was like, what is castoreum? I remember when I brought that back from Berkeley, when I was in those studios still, we would do these like crazy studio crawls where every studio would have an hors d'oeuvre and a signature cocktail. There were like
Dude,
a
did you
lot
make
of
a signature
studios.
cocktail out of beaver balls?
Oh no, I did not, but I did pass the bottle around and I made everyone guess what it was. And this one guy was like, "It's so familiar. I know what this is." And I was like, "There's no way you know that this is beaver balls."
And no one
Um,
ever saw him again after that night. He was
and
like,
no,
I
I
cannot go
saw
back
it.
there.
I was like, "I don't know if you want to keep smelling it or not, but that's what this is." Um, so yeah, I just gave it away. And she was appropriately impressed and interested and enchanted when she opened it. She looked at me and said, "Do you know what you just gave me?" And I said, "Yes, I do." And and so
Aw.
she's off in the world with this crazy collection of some beautiful and some gross smelling things that she's going to do something with. And now that's opened up space in my life and in my apothecary for something else to come in. And I
Mhm.
like the idea of that.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
awesome. I mean, it's first of all, fantastic for her.
Yeah.
Um, if again in part 4, We'll talk more about, kind of the emotional, uh, I don't know, whatever, right? I mean, how that kind of sits with you when you make the decision, when you give it to somebody, how it feels 6 months later. I mean, we literally could probably talk for an hour on,
Yeah.
that. But again, what fantastic for her, and it is a reminder that, another thing that collections can do potentially is what you're talking about. It's like it connects people in a way. Um, Sometimes, right, when you do something like that, right? If you're, you know, if I talk to somebody and they are just getting into record collecting,
Mm-hmm.
and you give them something that may not be rare at all, like the things you're
Mm-hmm.
talking about were kind of rare and hard to find, and
Mm-hmm.
but I mean, if somebody has 10 records and you give them, Fleetwood Mac Rumors on vinyl
Mm-hmm.
and they don't have it, like you have done something, right? You have made a
Yes.
connection with another person in a way that is pretty hard to replicate. Because there is like a generosity to it. There's a thoughtfulness. Then there's the music itself. Like there's so much that kind of goes on that's like that is unspoken in that
Mm.
that exchange, which I think again it's fantastic. I don't, it's hard to replicate something like that. So I do
Yeah.
think it's another, I don't know, just one of the wonderful things that may happen when you collect.
Yeah.
You
Well,
know,
because back to the records, like with you, you probably come across duplicates pretty often. And if you know that the record is worth it and rare, but you already have one, you go ahead and snatch it up because you'll get the opportunity maybe one day to be generous like that. And
totally.
you'll know it'll like make somebody's day to get that record.
Yeah, there are certain albums that under a certain price, I will just always buy for that
Yeah.
exact reason. If I can
Yeah.
find a clean copy of whatever a Cars album or find
Yeah.
that thing that that, like you said, someone in their teens or late early 20s is probably not going to maybe even know as music,
Yes.
and you're able to be like, hey, you know what, check this out, like. Yeah, I will. Yeah, I have actually have a kind of a little stash of those.
Oh, yeah. Because as a collector, like one of the things that you can really do is vet. You're like,
Yeah,
I know that this is a cool thing at a good price and highly desirable. Whereas someone that's just starting out, like, may not even notice any of that, but your eye is like, oh, no, don't sleep on that. So it's, yeah, you can be kind of the Obi-Wan collecting and be the Yoda.
yeah, yeah, and maybe. Oh, God, I don't know that I want to be Yoda. There's too much. There's too much
Not
pressure.
Yoda.
There's too much pressure. Um.
Yeah.
Uh. Okay. Well, let's do this.
Okay.
Let the people out there know if they did want to kind of learn more about you and what you do. How do they get in contact with you?
hmm Yes. So I can be found at River Island Apothecary everywhere. So that's on Facebook or Instagram, River Island Apothecary. And then the website is riverislandapothecary.com.
Okay. That's
Yeah.
awesome. And
Mhm.
what might some of those things, you kind of just mentioned them, but what are some of the things that you do
Yeah.
besides just learning about you, like what resources or courses or classes or things like that do you offer?
Yeah. So if you wanted to buy these oil blends, these anointing oils, you could find those on the website. And I also teach classes about those archetypes and those anointing oils. And I also teach aromatherapy. And there's information about all that on the website. There's also a couple of free classes on there about archetypes and anointing. So you can go and get a free class right away. And then I also am sort of a writer. And so I do a weekly newsletter called the Architelegram that has essays and poems, but also like class announcements and stuff. And then I've written a bunch of workbooks. One is called the Materia Mystica, and that
Hmm.
is an extensive workbook about the archetypes that I work with and how they overlay with the wheel of the year and with altar craft. And then I have a workbook called The Elements of Work, which takes the archetypes, the seasons, and some ritual craft aspects and adds the elements like earth, air, fire, water type elements to it and applies it to the creative process or your work in the world. And then I have a bunch of other little workbooks here and there. And I also have, last thing, is I make an almanac every year that's called the Darkwood Almanac.
Hmm.
And I take the holy days of the wheel of the year and the moon phases as they relate to these archetypes. And I look for patterns in those and create kind of I have a collaborator that I work with, and we made this almanac as a journal for observation for inner and outer nature. So that almanac is out. Actually, we're just putting the finishing touches on it now, so it should be out pretty soon, and I'll have that advertised soon. And it's just a PDF at this point because I don't have the funds to like print it for anyone, but it's a good PDF.
It's the best type of
You can
PDF.
print it yourself, and it's great. That's what we all do.
Okay, that's awesome. And I would encourage anybody who, yeah, I mean, anyone who wants to know more about some of the things we talked about, all the things we talked about, or just to get to, get to know Katie a little more, yeah, reach out. You will most certainly be enriched, I think, if you do that. So we're going to leave it on one last question. You are sitting in front of your organ.
Mhm,
You're staring at your oils, but they're staring back at you. What are they
mhm.
saying about you?
Ooh. They're saying something about complexity. Uh, they're saying they're saying something about relatability and complexity, but I can't totally get it yet. I'll have to listen closer. Yeah.
That's fair. You're a complex individual, no doubt. And as we've heard over the last almost 2.5 hours. So thanks, Katie. This was awesome.
Aw.
It was really, really, truly, truly fantastic to, as it always is, but in this case, to be very kind of focused on one topic for a little while. And you never know, right? I mean, but one of the beauties of teaching, as you well know, is that it might be one person, it might be 10 people, who knows, it could
Mm,
be more. But when people hear something and you're able to kind of help a spark get generated and then it
mm,
turns into something amazing, that's
mhm,
incredible. And I
mhm.
I think there were tons of things that you talked about that there's a lot of people who I think that spark is kind of going off. So
Aw.
thank you for your time,
Oh, well,
expertise.
thank you for saying that. And this is so fun. And I want to interview you right back.
Okay. Okay, we'll do that. Just let
That's
me
the
go get a
next
snack.
episode.
Let me get a snack. We'll get back on the phone in like 10 minutes.
I love it. Yeah, I mean, you ask really good questions and it's so fun. I don't know. It's just was a real treat to have this because you and I have so many conversations and it was a real treat to have this kind of conversation. And so thank you. Thank you for letting me talk about this my collection. Darn it, I guess I have a collection.
If I've accomplished nothing today, it is
Yeah, you
to
win.
convince you yeah, that I won. That's it. That was the point of all of this, right?
Yeah, I know. I already knew that.
I play a long game. I really do.
You win. One point for you. I'm a collector. I collect essential. Hi, I'm Katie, and I collect essential oils.
That is going to be the intro of this episode. I love that. All
Good.
right, Katie.
Well,
Well, I know you
yeah.
have to go. So let's call it a conversation and let's talk soon.
And we will talk soon. Yes. Thanks again. And yeah, we will talk soon.
Yeah, totally. All right.
All
We'll see
right.
you.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.